long time ago, in a tent in the middle of nowhere, somewhere out west. I was doubled over in pain. I've been here before, but this time it's going to be different. In that tent, what happened was I had come off of 6 years of medications for a disease I was told that would never be cured, I'd have for the rest of my life. And that day in the tent, just cold turkey, no prep, no premeditation. I had decided I'm not taking the meds anymore.
Tell your story, tell it loud. Tell your story, let it out. What broke in you can break the chain. What healed your heart can heal the world again. I saw the room grow still when
Hi. My story worth sipping is when I learned to radically listen to myself. So radical self-trust. So it's a long time ago, once upon a time, in a tent in the middle of nowhere, somewhere out west. I was doubled over in pain, but it wasn't anything upsetting. It was like, all right, I've been here before, but this time it's going to be different. So fast forward 1 year, I'm walking into a school, the National College of Naturopathic Medicine, Chinese medicine, we call it nowadays, and as a patient. And this was different for me. This was different. I had come off of, in that tent, what happened was I had come off of 6 years of medications for a disease I was told that would never be cured, I'd have for the rest of my life. And that day in the tent, just cold turkey, no prep, no premeditation. I had decided I'm not taking the meds anymore. And I was out west on a camping trip for 3 weeks in college, studying plants, studying ecosystems, something I had always done as a child even, in my backyard, playing with plants, making potions. And I'd always been drawn to the wisdom of plants. And so I was on this camping trip in college, and just, I think being surrounded by nature, just being away from my family, something had come over me, and I just felt like I'm going to do things differently from now on. So then fast forward into that Chinese medicine school as a student, as a patient. This was really different because this was a doctor really interested in everything about my body, everything, every little symptom, every little sign. They were touching my wrists, feeling my pulses. They were, touching my body, asking me questions. They really cared and they were really curious, and they really wanted to help. I could really sense that, even at that ripe old age of 22 at the time. And from then on, it was like, I was at the point, it was after I had graduated college at that point. I'm like, all right, what am I going to do with the rest of my life, right? We all have been there. I had no idea until I walked into that clinic. I walked out and I was like, that's what I want to do with the rest of my life. I know this. And it was like this huge, moment. And yeah, from then I signed up for the school out there. They had another school out there. I signed up right away and enrolled. And everything just made so much sense. It pulled everything together that I'd always loved, just nature and the curiosity about the universe, and everything falls into place with traditional East Asian medicine, because it's all about what is nature in me. And so I ended up coming back to the Chicagoland area, which, I still have a piece of my heart is still in Oregon. It's absolutely amazing there. Studied Chinese medicine, and I'm now an herbalist. And I can't say, you can't say from that moment on, I didn't have any more problems. You know, as soon as I stopped the medications, everything was fine, right? No, of course not. But the amazing thing was that I actually did go into remission from that disease, Crohn's disease. That same year that I went off the medications, I had the pain for about a week. I remember, like, it was a flare, you know. Your body's used to having these antibiotics and anti-inflammatories, and I kind of threw them, hopefully I didn't throw them down the toilet, I don't know what I don't know. But after that 1 week of pain, it was kind of like I was in a different place, and I had more space without that constant, like, pain and all the symptoms of Crohn's, to kind of explore more about myself and to be able to listen to myself without that kind of fear driving everything, and that lack of knowing anything else. You know, growing up, you know, just like a regular kid in the U.S., you know, you don't really know most people didn't know about acupuncture, herbs, all that kind of stuff. And it was just so fun to just learn all that kind of stuff. So school was a ton of fun. Made my best friend in acupuncture school. And so we still talk every day, more than my friends in the US. So yeah, it was like, what really happened in that tent, right? What was that turning point? I feel like it was just almost like getting struck by lightning. You don't really expect it. You don't know what's going to happen next. But I feel like that led me down a new path. And the ability to just know that this is really going to help a lot of other people, you know, I think drove all of us in school, and that's what brought all of us there. There, you know, in school there were people from all walks of life, all different countries, all different career paths that had led them there. I was one of the less common, coming straight from undergrad into this graduate program. So that was, gosh, 25 years ago. So now it's all about what else can I learn? It's what else can I learn? What don't I know? How does this make sense? Every person that walks in my door is kind of like this puzzle, you know. What do they need? I feel like I'm always just continually learning is how to really listen beyond the words that someone says. There's more behind it. And we are really complex. And, you know, constantly working on myself as well is part of what I do. You know, I think if I just sat back like, yep, I know it all, once, you know, every day, I would not be in business anymore. Just having to constantly work on myself. Where am I? Listening, noticing. It's not really like out of body, but it's kind of like when you're aware of yourself, it's almost like there's someone else watching you, but it's like someone inside you. So I'll be like, oh wow, I'm like crabby today, or, you know, what's that about? Or I'm feeling like this emotion towards this other person, what's that about, you know? It's, you know, physical medicine is not just physical, it's mental, emotional, spiritual. And so that's where I'm really at in life. And I feel like I used to try and play the game of like, oh, you know, I'm a healthcare professional and you've got an ache in your arm, let's check, you know, take a look at your arm and see what that's about. Everything is multidimensional. There's never any just one dimension to something. And just exploring that and seeing the multidimensionality in each person that I work with is really special. The things that I feel like what really helps me, things that I've gone through in my life. So the Crohn's disease, you know, having been in a body that suffered, I can really use that to relate better to people as well. You know, the painful periods I dealt with throughout my teen years, all the way, you know, into my 20s as well. And knowing that there's medicine that actually can resolve that, and knowing like all the other girls and women that walk around with like a week of their life taken away, it's like I almost want to get on top of a soapbox and like, you know, hey, you don't have to suffer, and you don't have to like miss school and vomit because your period is so bad, and you know, I don't have that pain anymore, but it's, you don't forget it either, you know, but it's like a part of like what drives you further, you know. And this whole like plants and people, you know, my undergrad having studied ethnobotany, I had no idea at the time that that was going to mean I was going to be an herbalist a few years later. I had no connection to that. And only looking back now in the past few years, I'm like, oh, wow, oh my gosh. And looking back like when I was a kid, like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize, I guess this was my destiny. I thought I only learned about it in my early 20s, but I was that kid in the backyard making potions, and I had like this walkout basement making potions in like the little drain down there with like the sticks and the leaves and the berries and the twigs. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what I do for a living now. I just realized that a few years ago. I've been doing this over 20 years. I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally didn't even put those two together. And then I decided to become a mother. And how am I going to do this, right? You know, I went against the grain with that as well, I feel like, at the time. It wasn't as common. It's getting more and more common, but I decided to have my babies at home. And that's given me like an ocean full of like, I feel like depth and experience that I'm happy to share with others too. Not to judge, not to tell somebody that their choice is right or wrong, but just to like let them know that there is this option, there is this other way of doing things, and that it's magical experience. I would have had a lot more kids if I could have just done that all again, having babies at home. And that was another way of like radical self-trust, where it's like, you know, not making decisions based on fear, right? Because where are you going to go when you make your decisions based on fear? You know, it's going to take you down the road of more and more fear. And, you know, in life, I believe there's like fear and love, and those are the two sides of the coin. And just this constant, like constant awareness to like, am I choosing from love? Am I choosing from love? I chose from fear. Why did I do that? What's behind that? How can I transform that with love? So I feel like what happened in the tent was love just like really knocked on my tent flap and was like, this is what you're doing, because this is going to be a way that you can really love yourself even deeper. And then like, you know, becoming a mother, you know, a lot of people feel very fearful, like if they were to have their baby at home, or like that idea of hearing like somebody had their baby at home. Oh my gosh, weren't you scared? You know, wasn't that so painful? And it's like it felt just, there was no question in my mind. I just knew that that was what was right for me. And there was never a question of fear. It was this trust. And the whole experience was just trust. And so when I'm working with women who are trying to conceive, pregnant, ready to have a baby, I really try and communicate that, like, you know, that really see if you can dig in deep and find that self-trust, and see if we can unlock those barriers to self-trust. And get everybody, I do neuro-emotional technique, and it's about getting okay with what is. And so like helping people get okay with, do I need to, you know, what if I have to have a cesarean section? What if I have to be induced? What if? And just getting everybody okay with all the different possibilities, because, you know, we can't control everything. And when you can just connect with yourself, connect with your body, and feel that trust and feel that sense of safety as well, then you can kind of move forward through all the challenges that are going to come up, whatever they are.
Tell your story.